Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Horse's Mouth Podcast. I am Jabbar. If this is your first time tuning in, and welcome back if you are tuning back in. This will be episode 9 of this podcast. I don't know what I want to call this particular episode yet, but I do know it has to do with the fact that I want to talk about how social media is essentially cultivating a culture of bandwagon and wave riders is what I want to talk about today, because it feels I want to talk about it in terms of what I see already, like social media, Twitter, Instagram. I'm not on TikTok, but I see TikToks everywhere, like TikToks on Twitter, TikToks on Instagram. I'm on Facebook technically, but I'm not on a lot. I jump in and out because I have family on Facebook, but not really to like really get into anything on Facebook anymore. And all of these social media sites are cultivated to like reposting, retweets. Also TikTok, I feel like is about like it feels like a culture where essentially we have a whole bunch of people who you'll see like the same themed skits being done over and over again by different people, the same dance moves being done over and over again by different people. On Twitter, I'll see literally whole tweets like constantly literally written out they were literally stolen word for word from other people, and they're constantly like taken and just redone and regurgitated, or literally see just the reposting and the retweeting on Twitter and stuff like that. Literally taking people's whole words. On Instagram is not as bad, but they do post now a lot of TikToks on there where people do like the same things over and over again. And so social media has cultivated a culture of just bandwagon and wave riding where there are no new ideas. But I don't want to just talk about this in terms of art and sort of cultural things, and sort of like artistic things. And that, because I already talked about, there seems to be no artistic innovation or vision or visionaries anymore, because I already talked about this in my I've already talked about this in my other episode. I think it was the first episode of this podcast where I talked about regurgitation and nostalgia. So I don't want to talk about that too much in this one, but I want to sort of transition it into how this has become dangerous in terms of political and activist spaces, because a lot of political and activist spaces have now they're on social media, right? A lot of political and activist movements and spaces are on social media, and now it feels like that because we have moved our political and social activist spaces onto social media, that now those spaces have also become sort of, I don't know, encompassed by the bandwagon and wave riding culture that social media sort of cultivates amongst people, and how there are no true political visionaries anymore. There seem to be no true political innovators anymore. You just see people constantly. I watch a lot. I've already talked about this as well before, that I watch a lot of political things on like YouTube and stuff like that, political left-leaning progressive shows on YouTube, and it just feels like a regurgitation of other people's thoughts and ideas and words. It feels like that. Also, another thing that really annoys me is that it feels like there are no new ideas. And like anytime somebody brings up like having having a different idea or a different way to go about something, there are all these bandwagon and wave riders who have no political vision, who have no way to innovate or make better, like political strategy. They just consistently tell other people, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do this. We're not going to do that because I haven't seen that work before. Yada, 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 yada. But it's and that's the problem right there. That's why I think it's almost dangerous that a lot of these political activist spaces have come onto social media, because now we have bandwagon and wave riders leading these spaces when they should not be in positions to do so, because they do not have the vision, they are not innovators, they do not have the conviction or the balls to try anything new. They don't have that. And so, but they are the ones leading in these spaces because they have been, so because that's what social media pushes to the front. Social media pushes to the front people who don't have new ideas. Social media pushes to the front people who just ride the wave. Social media pushes to the front people who just bandwagon and copy off of what other people say and do. It does not push, some of the most intelligent, some of the most artistic, some of the most innovative people have the fewest following. They don't have big followings because that's not what social media does. It does not push those people to the forefront. And I think that is on purpose. I think that is very purposeful. And it's dangerous because now our social and activist spaces are on social media, and social media pushes the people who don't have new ideas, the people who constantly will tell everybody, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do this, will tell people who have different ideas, tell people who have interesting new ways and new political strategies, no, we can't do this, it's never been done before, no, we can't do this, I've never seen it being done before. That's the whole point. If you're going to be, that's the whole point. The whole point is that you need people, you need leaders. You need leaders with conviction and innovation, and you need people with vision to lead, your movement in a direction towards some type of victories. Right? You need them because you need people who are going to, wanting to make people uncomfortable, wanting to do uncomfortable things, wanting to sort of push the envelope. You look at any political leader that anybody looks at and like upholds as like great. We go with MLK all the time, but even he was willing to make people uncomfortable. Maybe he didn't go to the extent of Malcolm X, but he still went pretty far. He might have not went to the extent of like other people, but he still went pretty far. You have to have people who are willing to like push that envelope like that. And too many people who now have these huge followings, who are technically leading because they do have these huge followings, who have been pushed to the forefront because they are not innovators, because they are not visionaries, because they just can regurgitate what other people say all the time. I'm constantly watching their shows, and they're constantly telling people what they can't do. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't have reparations. We can't fight for that. You can't fight for that. Da 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 da. It's like, I just don't see how that's possible right now with the political climate. That's the whole point. If you're a leader, you're supposed to make it possible. You're supposed to try to figure out with your movement that you have created, how do we make a way possible for reparations to happen? If you are for Medicare, if you're for third parties or whatever, because the third party is another thing they say will never happen. I don't believe in the third party will ever happen. Well, why don't you actually put in the work to make it happen? That's another thing. A lot of these innovators, not innovators, a lot of these bandwagon wave riders, their whole thing is based on not doing any work. And so because they just regurgitate and repost and retweet and re-say and reiterate what somebody else has already said before, they're not used to actually thinking and doing any work and putting in any work to create a sort of groundswell. Like, there's the wave rider, and then there's the person who creates the momentum to create the actual wave. And they don't really care. Like, they're waiting for somebody to create the wave. So many times when I hear like people talk about third parties specifically, people would be like, we need to create third parties, and people would be like, I don't see how that's going to work. I just haven't seen that. I haven't seen a viable way that's going to actually come about. Well, that's because if you're a leader in this space, that means you're supposed to, if people are asking for that, shouldn't you try to create that momentum? Shouldn't you put in the work to create that momentum? I don't understand this whole idea, and this is what is dangerous about it, because you could have a whole movement ready to go on this thing, but then you have these leaders in place pushed by an algorithm, because the algorithm pushes regurgitation, the algorithm pushes non-innovation, the algorithm pushes people who are not true leaders, who are not visionaries, and they just simply push them into the forefront to tell us what we cannot have. And I think that we all need to start re-looking at how who we're following, because I'm definitely going through that right now. I'm looking at who I'm following and who I should be listening to, and I think we need to start really looking at who we are listening to. Not just in terms, we can look at who we're listening to in terms of art as well. I've been doing that. I've been talking about art on my channel and been talking about artistic merit and nostalgia and regurgitation in art, but also in political spaces as well. Because how are we ever going to move forward if we're constantly, if the algorithm, if the social media is pushing us towards these people who are not, they're not the people who create the wave. They're not the people who create the wave. They're people who ride the wave once it's already been pushed forward or created. They're not the ones who, galvanize people and create the kinetic energy or motion or whatever it is to create this wave to even go. They're the ones who just, they see it and then they just jump on after. And I think that it's time to start identifying who is a wave rider and a bandwagoner, and who is a visionary and innovator in these political and activist spaces. And there's too many bandwagon wave riders. I've been sort of looking at it from a critical aspect in my point, like still watching some of these like political left-leaning shows, and just sort of like I've been weaning off a lot of people for a very long time, and like, you're a wave rider, you're a bandwagoner. One identification I can tell you right now that I've noticed: if somebody tells you that you can't do something, and it's only simply because they don't want to try, X, I'm done. Anybody who tells me, we can't do this, and it's not, and they don't really give a good reason for why, they just don't want to do it, they just don't want to try it, they just don't want to actually like put in the work to do this thing, X out, right? Like, X out. I don't want to listen to people, I don't want to follow people who simply just don't want to try anything, and who just don't want to even put in any work, right, to try anything new. But that's all I wanted to say about this. I know I've been away from the art scene for a minute now, in terms of, reviewing music and also reviewing movies and TV shows and stuff like that. I do want to get back to that, and also showing my face. So I think the next time you'll probably see me is when I'm doing a review of the Batman movie that just came out. I haven't really been interested in actually like talking about anything or reviewing anything, because nothing is interesting to me. Because like I said before in my first episode of this podcast, we're in a very like nostalgia regurgitative era right now, where everything is just regurgitation and nostalgia, and I just don't care to review something that I'm just going to be like, I hate this, I don't like this, I don't want to be. I understand people do that, and like they probably make a lot of views off of it, but I just don't want to be a channel where I review something and I'm constantly talking about how I don't like it. It just seems counterproductive. Like I saw people like reviewing Medea's Homecoming and like talking about how much they hate it. And I'm like, did we, like, what was the purpose of even watching Medea's Homecoming? What was the purpose of reviewing Medea's Homecoming? We all know that Tyler Perry is no longer interested in making any decent or good work anymore. It's been for a long time. Like, we all know it's a minstrel show. These are not new ideas. Like, why are you doing this? I saw some people do that. I was just like, you're literally just doing that to do something. I don't want to get on here and do something just to do it, right? Like, I think that's also why I've been sort of slowing down on the number of things that I talk about as well. And also review too. So, because I just don't want to get on here and do something just to do it, just because, it's going to give me a lot of views and yada, yada, yada. But yeah, I will be reviewing, and I show my face once again, when I do the Batman review, when I go see it, probably at the end of the week. And yeah, that'll be it. Comments and things you have to say down below. As always, welcome. And I'll see you next time for the next video.